This is my true story. I am Miss Loretta Johnson, 70 years old. And I have lived long enough to know that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who cut you the deepest. If you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Because what I'm about to tell you is not just about betrayal, but about how a woman like me found her strength when everyone thought I was finished. The night it all began, the bakery was filled with the sweet smell of cinnamon rolls and the low hum of laughter, the kind that only comes from family and old friends gathered together. It was supposed to be my retirement party, a celebration of 40 years of hard work, sweat, and soul poured into every loaf of bread and every slice of pie. My hands, brown and strong, were dusted with flour as I hugged neighbors and church ladies, my heart full and aching at the same time. I looked around at the faces I'd fed for decades, the children who'd grown up on my cornbread, the elders who'd trusted me with their secrets over coffee and pound cake. My daughter Patrice stood by the window, her husband Reggie at her side, both dressed sharp and smiling too wide. I should have known something was wrong by the way Patrice's eyes darted around the room, never quite meeting mine, and how Reggie kept checking his watch, tapping his foot like he had somewhere better to be. But I was too busy soaking in the love, too busy being grateful, to see the storm coming. When Patrice clinked her glass and called for everyone's attention, I thought she was about to give a toast, maybe say something kind about her old mama. Instead, she cleared her throat, her voice trembling just enough to make me nervous, and said, "Mama, it's time for you to rest. You've done enough. Reggie and I will be taking over the bakery from here on out." The room went silent, forks frozen in midair, eyes wide and searching. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear her next words. "We have the papers right here," she said, pulling a thick envelope from her purse. "Mama already signed them last month. She agreed to hand over the business." My knees went weak. I gripped the edge of the counter, searching my memory for any moment I'd signed such a thing. The crowd began to murmur, confusion and shock rippling through the room. Reggie stepped forward, his voice slick as oil. "It's all legal, y'all. Miss Loretta's worked hard, but it's time for the next generation to take over." I looked at Patrice, my only child, the girl I'd raised on my own after her daddy died, and I saw something cold in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Betrayal sharp as a knife. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up, the words stuck behind a wall of disbelief. The church ladies looked at me, their faces a mix of pity and outrage. My granddaughter Tasha, standing near the door, looked like she was about to cry. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stare at those papers, my hands shaking. Patrice smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mama, you said yourself you were tired. Let us take care of things now." The room felt smaller, the air thick with judgment and whispers. I saw Reggie slip the envelope into his jacket, his eyes daring me to protest. I forced myself to stand tall, to keep my dignity, even as my world tilted. "We'll talk about this later," I managed, my voice steady but cold. Patrice nodded, her smile tight. "Of course, Mama. But everyone here should know. The bakery is in good hands." The party fizzled after that, people making excuses to leave, the warmth replaced by a chill that settled deep in my bones. As I cleaned up the crumbs and empty cups, I caught Patrice and Reggie whispering in the corner, their heads close together, glancing at me like I was a problem to be solved. I felt a wave of anger rise up, hot and bitter, but I swallowed it down. Not here, not tonight. When the last guest left, I locked the door and leaned against the counter, the silence pressing in on me. I thought about all the years I'd spent building this place, all the sacrifices, all the love. And now in one night it felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But as I stood there staring at the empty bakery, I made a promise to myself. They might think I'm old and tired, but they forgot who taught them how to fight. They forgot who survived when everyone else gave up. I wasn't about to let my life's work be stolen by my own blood. Not without a fight. And as I turned off the lights and stepped into the cool night air, I knew this was just the beginning. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is served slow, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke before the sun, my mind racing with questions and my heart heavy with a kind of ache I hadn't felt since the day I buried my husband. The house was quiet, the only sound the old clock ticking in the hallway, and the distant rumble of a garbage truck making its rounds. I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee, staring at the faded photograph of Patrice as a little girl, her smile wide and innocent, her arms wrapped around my waist. How did we get here, I wondered, from bedtime stories and scraped knees to legal papers and cold stares. I replayed every moment from the night before, searching for clues, for some sign I'd missed. My phone buzzed, startling me. It was a text from Tasha. "Grandma, are you okay? I'm so sorry about last night. I love you." I smiled, a little warmth blooming in my chest. At least I still had her. I texted back, "I'm all right, baby. Don't you worry about me." But the truth was I was anything but all right. I needed answers. I needed to know what Patrice and Reggie were really up to. I dressed in my work clothes, the ones I'd worn for years, soft denim, flour-stained apron, sturdy shoes, and walked the 3 blocks to the bakery, the morning air crisp and sharp against my skin. The city was just waking up, the sky streaked with pink and gold, but my mind was clouded with suspicion. When I reached the bakery, I found the door already unlocked. Patrice was inside, her hair pulled back tight, her face set in a mask of determination. She barely looked at me as I entered. "Morning, Mama," she said, her voice flat. "Reggie and I are meeting with the accountant today. We'll need you to sign a few things." I felt my jaw clench. "I'm not signing anything until I understand what's going on," I replied, my voice low but steady. Patrice sighed, exasperated, as if I were a stubborn child. "Mama, you said you wanted to retire. We're just trying to help." I looked her dead in the eye. "Help who, Patrice? Me or yourselves?" She flinched just a little but recovered quickly. "We'll talk later," she said, turning away. I watched her walk into the office, the door closing behind her with a soft click. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to cry. Instead, I busied myself with the morning prep, kneading dough, measuring sugar, letting the familiar motions calm my nerves. But my mind kept drifting back to those papers, to the way Reggie had smirked, to the coldness in Patrice's eyes. Around mid-morning, Miss Geraldine, my oldest friend from church, stopped by for her usual sweet roll and coffee. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "Loretta, what's happened?" she asked, her voice gentle. I hesitated, then told her everything, the party, the papers, the way Patrice and Reggie were acting. Miss Geraldine listened, her brow furrowed, her hands folded tight in her lap. "You know you can't trust Reggie," she said quietly. "He's always been slick. And Patrice, well, she's lost her way, but she's still your child." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I just don't know what to do, Geraldine. I feel like I'm losing everything." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're not alone, Loretta. We'll figure this out together." Her words gave me a little hope, a reminder that I still had allies. As the day wore on, I noticed Patrice and Reggie whispering in the office, their voices low and urgent. I caught snippets: the sale, the developer, Mama doesn't know. My stomach twisted. Something was happening behind my back, something big. That afternoon, as I was closing up, I found a letter from the bank slipped under the door. It was addressed to me, but the envelope had been opened and resealed. My hands shook as I read it. Notice of overdue payment, final warning. I stared at the numbers, my mind reeling. I'd never missed a payment in my life. How could this be? I marched into the office, waving the letter. Patrice, what is this? Why is the bank saying we're behind? She looked up, her face pale. It's nothing, Mama. Just a mix-up. I'll handle it. But I saw the fear in her eyes, the way her hands trembled as she stuffed papers into a drawer. I knew then that she was hiding something that could ruin us all. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the city's restless heartbeat. I thought about all the years I'd spent building the bakery, all the sacrifices I'd made for Patrice, all the love I'd poured into every loaf of bread. And now it felt like it was all slipping away, stolen by the very people I trusted most. But as the darkness pressed in, I made another promise to myself. I wasn't going to let them take everything I'd built. I was going to fight no matter how hard it got. And as the first light of dawn crept through my window, I knew one thing for sure. The truth always comes out, and I was going to make sure it did. The next day I arrived at the bakery before anyone else, the sky still a deep blue, the streetlights flickering as the city yawned awake. I needed time alone, time to think, to breathe in the scent of yeast and sugar and remember who I was before all this mess. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and let the familiar hum of the oven settle my nerves. As I set out the mixing bowls, I replayed every conversation from the past week, every odd glance, every time Patrice had brushed off my questions. I knew my daughter, her tells, her moods, the way she bit her lip when she was hiding something. But this was different. This was bigger than a little white lie or a missed curfew. This was my life's work, and I could feel it slipping through my fingers like flour on a windy day. I was rolling out dough when I heard the back door creak. I wiped my hands and peeked through the kitchen window, just in time to see Reggie slipping inside, looking over his shoulder like a man with something to hide. He didn't see me as he hurried to the office, clutching a folder to his chest. My heart thudded. I waited a few minutes, then tiptoed down the hall, careful not to make a sound. Through the thin office door I heard Reggie's voice, low and urgent, on the phone. Yeah, she still doesn't know. The old lady's stubborn, but we'll get her out. The developer's ready to sign as soon as we have the deed. Just a few more days. My blood ran cold. I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting the urge to burst in and confront him right then and there. Instead, I slipped back to the kitchen, my mind racing. They were planning to sell the bakery out from under me, to a developer no less. All those years, all those memories, about to be bulldozed for a parking lot or some fancy condos. I felt sick, betrayed, but also angry. Angrier than I'd been in years. I needed proof, something solid, before I made my move. Later that morning, as the bakery filled with the usual crowd, Miss Geraldine with her crossword, Mr. Otis with his stories about the old neighborhood, I tried to act normal, but my hands shook as I poured coffee. Tasha came in after school, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes worried. "Grandma, are you okay?" she whispered as she helped me restock the shelves. I nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm all right, baby. Just tired." But she saw through me like she always did. "If you need anything, I'm here," she said, squeezing my hand. That afternoon, as I was sweeping up, I found a slip of paper wedged behind the register. A business card for a real estate agent, with Patrice's handwriting on the back. Call about sale. My heart pounded. I tucked the card into my apron, my mind spinning with questions. Why would Patrice be talking to a real estate agent behind my back? What else was she hiding? That night, I called Miss Geraldine and told her everything I'd overheard, everything I'd found. She listened, her voice steady and calm. "Loretta, you need to protect yourself. Start gathering every document, every receipt, anything that proves the bakery is yours. And keep your eyes open. People show their true colors when money's involved. Her words settled over me like a blanket, giving me a sense of purpose. I spent the next few hours digging through old files, searching for the deed, the business license, anything with my name on it. As I sorted through the papers, I found a letter from my late husband, tucked inside an old cookbook. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, the familiar script bringing tears to my eyes. Loretta, it read. If you're reading this, it means you're facing something hard. Remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone take what you built. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. I pressed the letter to my heart, feeling his strength flow through me. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I made copies of every important document and hid them in a safe place. I started watching Patrice and Reggie more closely, noting every phone call, every meeting, every time they left the bakery together. I was determined to catch them in the act, to gather enough evidence to stop them before it was too late. But as the days passed, the tension grew. Patrice became more distant, snapping at me over small things, avoiding my eyes. Reggie was always on his phone, always in a hurry, always looking for an excuse to leave. I felt like a stranger in my own business, my own family, but I refused to give up. I was Miss Loretta Johnson, and I'd survived worse than this. I just needed to hold on a little longer, to keep my eyes open, and to trust that the truth would come out. And as I locked up the bakery that night, I whispered a promise to myself and to my late husband. I will not let them take what we built. Not now, not ever. The next week, I moved through my days like a shadow, watching, listening, collecting every scrap of information I could. I kept my head down, but my eyes were wide open, and every time Patrice or Reggie thought I wasn't looking, I started noticing things I'd missed before. How Patrice would slip out back to take calls, her voice hushed and urgent, or how Reggie would linger by the register, pocketing small bills when he thought no one was watching. I wrote everything down in a little notebook I kept tucked in my apron, every odd detail, every suspicious glance. One afternoon, as I was restocking the flour in the pantry, I heard voices drifting from the office. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding, and listened. "She's getting suspicious," Patrice whispered, her voice tight with worry. "We need to move faster. The developer wants the deal done by the end of the month." Reggie's voice was cold. "Let her be suspicious. She can't prove anything. Once the papers are signed, it's over." My hand shook as I gripped the edge of a shelf, anger and fear swirling inside me. I waited until they left, then slipped into the office, searching for anything that might give me an edge. In the bottom drawer, beneath a pile of receipts, I found a folder labeled, "Sale Confidential." My breath caught as I flipped through the pages. A contract to sell the bakery, my name forged in shaky handwriting, and a check from the developer made out to Patrice and Reggie. My world spun. They were really going to do it. Sell my life's work, my home, my legacy, and leave me with nothing. I snapped photos of every page with my phone, my hands trembling. That night, I called Tasha and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I showed her everything: the contract, the forged signature, the check. Her eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, how could they do this to you?" she whispered. I hugged her tight, feeling her love and loyalty wrap around me like a shield. "People do strange things when money's involved, baby. But we're not going to let them win." Tasha nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "What do we do now?" I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. "We gather more evidence. We watch, we listen, and when the time is right, we show everyone the truth." Over the next few days, Tasha became my eyes and ears. She started staying late at the bakery, pretending to do homework in the corner while she recorded Patrice and Reggie's conversations on her phone. She caught them talking about the sale, about how they'd finally be free once the deal went through, about how the old lady won't know what hit her. Each recording was a knife in my heart, but also a weapon in my hand. Meanwhile, I reached out to Miss Geraldine, who had a cousin working at the county clerk's office. She promised to look into the deed and see if anything had been filed without my knowledge. The days crawled by, each one heavier than the last, but I refused to let despair take root. I baked, I smiled for the customers, I played the part of the tired old woman who didn't know what was happening. But inside I was sharpening my claws, waiting for the right moment to strike. One evening as I was closing up, Tasha rushed in, breathless. "Grandma, you need to hear this," she said, pressing her phone into my hand. I listened to the recording, my blood boiling as I heard Reggie say, "Once we get the money, we're gone. Let her figure out the mess. She's too old to fight back." Patrice laughed, a sound I barely recognized. "She'll be fine. She's got her church friends. We deserve this." I felt something inside me snap. Not just anger, but a deep, cold resolve. They thought I was weak, that I'd just roll over and let them take everything. They forgot who raised them, who taught them to stand tall, who survived when everyone else gave up. I looked at Tasha, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "It's time," I said quietly. "We're going to show them who they're dealing with." That night I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers, recordings, and memories. I thought about my late husband, about the promise I'd made to protect our legacy. I thought about Patrice as a little girl, about the love I still felt for her, twisted and bruised but not gone. And I thought about the bakery, the heart of our family, the soul of our community. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone who'd ever found comfort in a slice of my sweet potato pie. For every neighbor who'd ever leaned on me in hard times. As I drifted off to sleep, I knew the battle was just beginning. But for the first time in weeks, I felt hope flicker in my chest. I was ready, and I was not alone. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years, my mind clear and sharp as a knife. I dressed in my Sunday best, not because it was church day, but because I wanted to remind myself, and everyone else, who I was. I pinned my late husband's brooch to my collar, a small piece of him close to my heart, and called Tasha to meet me at the bakery before opening. The air was thick with anticipation as we sat together in the quiet kitchen, the smell of fresh dough rising around us. "Are you sure you want to do this, Grandma?" Tasha asked, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. I nodded, squeezing her hand. "It's time, baby. We can't let them take what's ours." As the clock struck 9, Patrice and Reggie arrived, their faces tight with impatience. "Mama, we need to talk," Patrice said, her tone clipped. "We have a meeting with the developer this afternoon, and we need you to sign the final papers." I looked her dead in the eye, my voice steady as stone. "I'm not signing anything until you explain what's really going on." Reggie rolled his eyes, but Patrice's face flushed with anger. "Mama, you're making this harder than it needs to be. You said you wanted to retire. Why are you fighting us?" I stood, my hands shaking but my resolve unbreakable. "Because you're lying to me, Patrice. I know about the sale. I know about the forged signature. I know you've been stealing from the business." The room went silent, the only sound the ticking of the old wall clock. Reggie tried to bluster his way through. "You don't know what you're talking about, old lady. You're confused." But Tasha stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "We have recordings. We have the contract. We know everything." Patrice's eyes widened in shock, her bravado crumbling. You were spying on us?" she stammered. I shook my head, sadness and anger warring inside me. "I was protecting what's mine. What your daddy and I built with our own hands. You tried to take it all away, Patrice. For what? Money. A quick escape. Tears welled in her eyes, but she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Reggie, seeing the tide turn, tried to shift the blame. This was all Patrice's idea. I just went along with it. Patrice spun on him, her voice rising. Don't you dare put this all on me, Reggie. You said we deserved better. That mama was holding us back. The argument exploded, years of resentment and greed spilling out in front of me and Tasha. I let them fight, let them show their true colors while I stood tall, my dignity intact. When the shouting finally died down, I spoke, my voice quiet but full of steel. You both need to leave. Right now. I'll be calling a lawyer, and if you try anything else, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows what you did. Patrice's face crumpled, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Reggie glared at me, but I saw the fear in his eyes. They left without another word, the door slamming behind them. Tasha hugged me tight, her tears soaking my blouse. I'm so proud of you, Grandma, she whispered. I held her close, my heart breaking and healing all at once. I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, I felt the power shift back into my hands. I was no longer the victim. I was the one in control. As I watched the sun rise higher in the sky, casting golden light across the bakery floor, I knew the real fight was just beginning. But I was ready, and I would not back down no matter what they threw at me next. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and whispered conversations with Miss Geraldine and Tasha, my two anchors in a world that suddenly felt unsteady beneath my feet. I met with a lawyer, a sharp young woman named Miss Carter, who listened to my story with a furrowed brow and a fierce glint in her eye. You did the right thing, Miss Loretta, she said, flipping through the copies of the forged contract and the recordings Tasha had gathered. This is more than enough to stop the sale and protect your business. But you need to be careful. People who are desperate for money can be unpredictable. Her words echoed in my mind as I walked home that evening, the city lights flickering like distant stars. I thought about Patrice, about the little girl who used to beg for one more bedtime story, who used to help me knead dough on Saturday mornings. How had we come to this? I wanted to believe there was still good in her, that she could find her way back, but the hurt ran deep. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table, I heard a soft knock at the door. It was Tasha, her face pale and anxious. Grandma, I just got a text from Mama. She says she's sorry, but she and Reggie are going to fight you on this. She says you're too old to run the bakery, that you're not thinking straight. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. Let them try, baby. We have the truth on our side. The next morning, I arrived at the bakery to find a notice taped to the door. Under new management, Patrice and Reggie Johnson. My blood boiled. They were trying to take my name, my legacy, right out from under me. I tore the sign down and marched inside, my heart pounding. The staff looked at me with wide eyes, unsure who to follow. I gathered them in the kitchen, my voice steady and strong. This bakery is mine. It always has been. If you stand with me, I promise you'll have a job for as long as I'm standing. But if you side with Patrice and Reggie, you can walk out that door right now. Not a single person moved. Miss Geraldine, who'd come in early to help with the morning rush, squeezed my hand. We're with you, Loretta. All the way. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them away. There was no time for weakness. That afternoon, Miss Carter called with news. The developer's lawyer is pushing hard. But with the evidence you have, they don't have a leg to stand on. I've filed an injunction to stop the sale. But be ready. Patrice and Reggie might try to turn the community against you. Sure enough, by evening rumors were swirling. Patrice had gone to the local paper, painting herself as the dutiful daughter trying to save the family business from her confused, elderly mother. She claimed I was unfit to run the bakery, that I was endangering everyone's jobs. The headline the next morning read, "Family Feud Threatens Beloved Bakery." I felt the sting of betrayal all over again, but I refused to let it break me. Instead, I called a meeting at the church hall, inviting everyone in the neighborhood to hear my side of the story. The night of the meeting, the hall was packed, old friends, loyal customers, even a few curious strangers. I stood at the front, my hands trembling just a little, and told them everything. I showed them the forged contract, played the recordings, and read my late husband's letter aloud. The room was silent, every eye on me. When I finished, Miss Geraldine stood and spoke, her voice ringing with conviction. "Loretta Johnson is the heart of this community. She's fed us, cared for us, and never once turned her back on anyone in need. If you believe in her, stand with her now." One by one, people rose to their feet, their voices joining in a chorus of support. I felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over me, stronger than any pain Patrice and Reggie could inflict. But as I looked out at the crowd, I saw Patrice standing in the back, her face twisted with anger and shame. I knew she wouldn't give up easily, but neither would I. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for whatever came next. The morning after the church meeting, I woke to a flood of messages. Neighbors offering help, old friends dropping off casseroles and pies, even strangers from across town sending notes of encouragement. The bakery was busier than it had been in years, the line stretching out the door. People coming not just for my sweet rolls but to show they stood with me. I felt a surge of pride and gratitude, but I also knew the fight was far from over. Patrice and Reggie were nowhere to be seen that day, but their absence was a shadow that lingered in every corner. Around noon, Miss Geraldine came bustling in, her eyes wide with urgency. "Loretta, you need to see this," she said, thrusting a folded newspaper into my hands. The headline screamed, "Daughter Claims Mother Unfit. Legal Battle Over Bakery Heats Up." My stomach twisted as I read Patrice's words, painting me as a stubborn old woman clinging to the past, refusing to let go for the good of the family. She even claimed I'd been hiding money, mismanaging funds, and putting the business at risk. I felt the sting of humiliation, but I refused to let it show. Instead, I called Miss Carter, who assured me, "This is just noise, Miss Loretta. They're trying to rattle you. Stay focused on the evidence." That afternoon, Tasha came running in breathless. "Grandma, I heard Mama and Reggie talking outside the courthouse. They're trying to get a doctor to say you're not of sound mind. They want to have you declared incompetent so they can take everything." My heart pounded, fear and fury warring inside me. I hugged Tasha tight, whispering, "Don't you worry, baby. We're going to show them just how sharp this old mind still is." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I thought about all the times I'd been underestimated, all the times people had tried to write me off because of my age, my skin, my quiet ways. But I also thought about every battle I'd won, every hardship I'd survived. I wasn't about to let my own daughter and her scheming husband be the ones to break me. The next morning, I marched into the bakery with my head held high, my staff rallying around me. We worked harder than ever, filling orders, laughing, and sharing stories. The community's support was a balm to my wounded heart, but I knew I needed to be ready for whatever Patrice and Reggie threw at me next. That afternoon, Miss Carter called with an update. "They've filed a petition to have you evaluated by a court-appointed doctor. But don't worry, Loretta. I've already lined up character witnesses, and your medical records are spotless." They're grasping at straws. I thanked her, my resolve hardening. That evening, as I closed up the bakery, I found a letter slipped under the door. It was from Patrice. The words were cold, almost cruel. "You can't win, Mama. You're alone in this. Just give up and let us handle things. I stared at the letter, my hands shaking, but then I laughed. A deep, rich sound that echoed through the empty shop. Alone? She had no idea how wrong she was. I had a whole town behind me, a lifetime of strength, and a heart that refused to quit. As I locked the door and stepped into the cool night air, I whispered a promise to myself. I will not be broken. Not by family, not by lies, not by anyone. The battle was getting uglier, but I was ready to fight with everything I had. And I knew deep down that the truth would win in the end. The day of the court-appointed evaluation arrived with a gray sky and a steady drizzle, the kind of weather that seeps into your bones and makes you question everything. I dressed carefully, choosing a deep blue dress and my favorite pearl earrings, determined to show the world and Patrice that I was still every bit the woman who built a business from nothing. Tasha insisted on coming with me, her hand warm and steady in mine as we walked into the doctor's office. The waiting room was cold and sterile, the walls lined with certificates and the faint smell of antiseptic in the air. Patrice and Reggie sat across from us, their faces tight with anticipation, Reggie's leg bouncing with nervous energy. Patrice wouldn't meet my eyes, but I could feel her gaze burning holes in my resolve. When the doctor called my name, I stood tall, my back straight, and followed him into the small office. The evaluation was thorough. Questions about my memory, my daily routines, my business decisions. I answered each one with calm confidence, recalling details from decades past, reciting recipes from memory, even sharing a few stories that made the doctor chuckle. I could see the respect growing in his eyes, and by the end he shook my hand and said, "Miss Loretta, you're as sharp as they come. I wish more folks your age had your spirit." Relief flooded me, but I kept my composure as I walked back into the waiting room. Patrice's face fell when she saw the doctor's smile, and Reggie muttered something under his breath. Tasha squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Grandma," she whispered. "You showed them." But I knew this was just another battle in a long war. That evening, Miss Carter called with more news. "The judge has reviewed the evaluation and dismissed their petition. You're in the clear, Loretta." But they're not giving up. The developer's lawyer is pushing for a quick sale, and Patrice and Reggie are still trying to forge your signature on new documents. My anger flared, but I forced myself to think strategically. "We need to go public," I said. "We need to show everyone what they're really doing." Miss Carter agreed, and together we planned a town hall meeting, inviting the press, the mayor, and anyone who cared about the bakery. The days leading up to the meeting were tense, every moment charged with anticipation. The bakery was busier than ever, the community rallying around me, but I could feel the pressure mounting. Late one night, as I was closing up, I caught Reggie sneaking around the back, trying to break into the office. I confronted him, my voice cold and steady. "You need to leave, Reggie. You're not welcome here." He glared at me, his bravado slipping. "You think you've won, old woman? This isn't over." I stood my ground, refusing to let fear take root. "It's over when I say it's over. Now get out before I call the police." He slunk away, defeated for now, but I knew he'd be back. As I locked the door and turned off the lights, I felt a surge of determination. They could try to tear me down, but I was stronger than they ever imagined. The town hall was coming, and I was ready to lay everything bare. The truth was on my side, and I was done hiding. The next chapter of this fight would be public, and I was prepared to face it head-on, no matter what it cost me. The night of the town hall arrived, and the whole city seemed to buzz with anticipation. The community center was packed wall to wall, the air thick with the scent of coffee, rain-soaked coats, and nervous energy. I stood at the back for a moment, watching neighbors, church friends, and even a few folks I hadn't seen in years fill the folding chairs. The mayor sat near the front, flanked by a reporter from the local paper and a cameraman from the evening news. Patrice and Reggie arrived late, slipping in with their lawyer, their faces set in stone. Tasha stood beside me, her hand in mine, her presence a steady anchor. When my name was called, I walked to the podium, my heart pounding but my voice clear. Thank you all for coming. I began, my gaze sweeping the room. Most of you know me as Miss Loretta, the woman who's been baking bread and pies for this town for 40 years. But tonight, I'm here as a mother, a business owner, and someone who's been betrayed by her own blood. A hush fell over the crowd. I took a deep breath and laid out the evidence. Copies of the forged contracts, the bank statements, the recordings Tasha had made, and the letter from my late husband. I played the audio of Reggie and Patrice plotting to sell the bakery, their voices echoing through the hall. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Patrice's face went pale, her eyes darting around the room as the truth settled over her like a heavy blanket. Reggie tried to interrupt, but the mayor silenced him with a raised hand. Let her finish, he said, his voice firm. I continued, my voice trembling only once as I read my husband's words about legacy and love. This bakery isn't just a business. It's a home, a safe place, a piece of our history. And I won't let anyone, family or not, take that away. The room erupted in applause, people rising to their feet, shouting words of support. The developer's lawyer tried to speak, but the mayor cut him off. This town stands with Miss Loretta. We won't let greed destroy what she's built. The reporter snapped photos, the cameraman zoomed in on Patrice's tear-streaked face. Reggie slumped in his chair, defeated. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Patrice, my voice soft but unyielding. You were my daughter before you were anything else. I loved you, I raised you, and I would have given you the world if you'd only asked. But you tried to take it by force, and now you have to live with the consequences. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was the kind of silence that comes before a storm breaks and the air is finally clear. I stepped down from the podium, my legs shaking but my spirit soaring. The truth was out and there was no going back. As the crowd surged around me, offering hugs and congratulations, I caught a glimpse of Patrice slipping out the side door, her head bowed. I felt a pang of sorrow but also a sense of release. The fight wasn't over, but the hardest part was behind me. The town had chosen its side, and for the first time in months, I felt truly seen, truly heard. The bakery was safe for now, but I knew there would be more battles ahead, and I was ready to face them, one day at a time. The days after the town hall felt like waking up after a long, hard storm. Everything was quieter, but nothing was quite the same. The bakery was busier than ever, with people coming in not just for my sweet potato pie but to offer hugs, stories, and sometimes even apologies for not seeing the truth sooner. I felt a deep gratitude for my community, but there was a heaviness in my chest that wouldn't lift. Patrice and Reggie disappeared from town, their names whispered in every corner, their shame a shadow that lingered over every conversation. Tasha stayed close, helping me with the morning rush, her laughter a balm to my tired heart. One afternoon, as we were closing up, the mayor stopped by with a letter in hand. Miss Loretta, the city council voted to recognize your bakery as a historic site. No developer can touch it now, not without the whole town's say-so. Tears sprang to my eyes as I read the official seal, the words protected for future generations shining on the page. I hugged the mayor, my heart swelling with relief and pride. That night I sat at my kitchen table, the letter spread out before me, and let myself cry for everything I'd lost and everything I'd managed to save. The next morning I found a note slipped under the bakery door. It was from Patrice. The handwriting was shaky, the words few. Mama, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll understand. I was scared. I wanted more and I lost myself. Take care of Tasha. She needs you. I read the note over and over, my heart breaking all over again. I wanted to hate her, to hold on to my anger, but all I felt was a deep, aching sadness. I folded the note and tucked it into my apron. A reminder that even the deepest wounds can't erase the love between a mother and her child. That afternoon, Tasha found me sitting alone in the back room, the weight of everything pressing down on my shoulders. She knelt beside me, her eyes full of worry. "Grandma, you did everything right. You saved the bakery, you saved our family's name. Don't let what Mama did take away your joy." I hugged her tight, grateful for her strength, her loyalty, her love. "We're going to be all right, baby," I whispered. "We're going to build something new, something better." That night, as I locked up the bakery, I looked out at the empty street, the neon sign glowing in the darkness. I thought about all the people who had come through those doors, all the memories baked into the walls. I knew there would be more hard days ahead, more battles to fight, but I also knew I wasn't alone. The town was with me, Tasha was with me, and somewhere deep down I hoped Patrice would find her way back too. As I turned off the lights and stepped into the cool night air, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The worst was behind us, and the future, though uncertain, was finally ours to shape. The weeks that followed brought a gentle kind of healing, the kind that seeps in slowly, like sunlight through a kitchen window after a long night. The bakery became more than just a business. It was a place of laughter, forgiveness, and second chances. I hired 2 young women from the neighborhood, both single mothers looking for a fresh start, and taught them the secrets of my cornbread and the patience needed for a perfect pound cake. Tasha took on more responsibility, learning the books, managing the staff, and even coming up with new recipes that brought in a younger crowd. The community's support never wavered. Every morning the line stretched down the block, and every afternoon, someone would stop by just to say, "Thank you, Miss Loretta, for not giving up." But even as the days grew brighter, there were moments when the past crept in, when I'd catch myself glancing at the door, half hoping, half dreading that Patrice might walk through it. One Sunday after church, as I was wiping down the counter, I heard the bell above the door ring. I looked up, and for a split second my heart stopped. It wasn't Patrice, but a young woman I didn't recognize, her eyes wide with awe as she took in the bakery. She introduced herself as Jasmine, a college student who'd grown up hearing stories about my pies from her grandmother. "I want to learn from you, Miss Loretta," she said, her voice trembling with hope. "I want to know how you built something that lasts." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Come by after class, Jasmine. I'll show you everything I know." That evening, as I sat with Tasha on the back steps, watching the sun dip below the rooftops, she turned to me, her eyes shining. "Grandma, do you ever regret fighting so hard for this place?" I shook my head, the answer clear in my heart. "No, baby. This bakery is more than flour and sugar. It's our story. It's proof that no matter how many times life tries to knock you down, you can always rise again." Tasha leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. But just as I was about to close up for the night, the phone rang. It was a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. On the other end was Patrice, her voice small and broken. "Mama, I'm in trouble. I don't know where else to turn." My heart clenched, old wounds threatening to reopen, but I listened as she explained her situation. Alone, broke, and scared, with nowhere to go. I took a deep breath, the weight of forgiveness heavy on my tongue. "Come home, Patrice," I said softly. "We'll figure it out together." As I hung up, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or town halls, but in the quiet moments when you choose love over pride. The story wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning I woke before dawn, my heart heavy but hopeful, knowing that forgiveness is never easy but always necessary. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Patrice. The house was quiet, the only sound the gentle ticking of the old clock on the wall, and the distant hum of the city waking up. When the doorbell finally rang, I opened it to find Patrice standing on the porch, her eyes red from crying, Her shoulders slumped with the weight of regret. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your kindness after everything I did." I pulled her into my arms, feeling her body shake with sobs, and whispered, "You're my child. That will never change. We all lose our way sometimes, but what matters is finding the courage to come home." We sat together at the table, the morning light spilling across the worn wood, and talked for hours about the past, about the pain, about the choices that led us here. Patrice told me about the shame she carried, the fear that she'd never be able to make things right. I listened, my heart aching, but I also saw the little girl she used to be, the one who needed her mama's love more than anything. Tasha joined us, her eyes wary at first, but as Patrice apologized and promised to do better, I saw the walls between them begin to crumble. We decided together that Patrice would stay with us for a while, help out at the bakery, and start rebuilding the trust she'd broken. It wouldn't be easy, healing never is, but for the first time, I felt hope blooming in the cracks of our family. That afternoon, we went to the bakery as a family. The staff welcomed Patrice with cautious smiles, and I could see the gratitude in her eyes as she tied on an apron and rolled up her sleeves. Jasmine watched with curiosity as I showed Patrice how to knead dough, the same way I'd taught her as a child. The three of us worked side by side, laughter and tears mixing in the warm air, the scent of fresh bread rising around us. As the sun set, casting golden light through the bakery windows, I looked at my daughter and granddaughter and felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The bakery was safe, our family was healing, and the future, though uncertain, was finally ours to shape together. That night, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, I thought about everything we'd survived: betrayal, heartbreak, public shame, and the long road back to forgiveness. I realized that true strength isn't just about fighting for what's yours. It's about opening your heart, even when it's been broken. It's about choosing love again and again, no matter how many times you've been hurt. As the stars blinked to life above the city, I whispered a prayer of thanks for second chances, for the power of community, and for the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. This is my true story. My name is Miss Loretta Johnson, and if you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, I hope you know you're not alone. We all have the power to rise, to forgive, and to build something beautiful from the ashes. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And remember, no matter how dark it gets, the dawn always comes.